Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of SacTown Movie Buffs. Once again, I'm Kier, and this is Jason. And today we are actually doing our top 10 list of 2020. So we have finally seen all the films that we wanted to see for the year. Well, I don't know. Jason probably still has a few more that he wants to watch, but we decided enough is enough. We're ready for our top 10. So before we get into that, how was 2020 for you? How was the year overall as far as films go with the quarantine situation and not being able to go to theaters? And how was the movie quality in your opinion for this year or last year, I should say?
It was pretty darn good. I think I want to say I'm really happy with my top 10. Not that I'm not always happy with my top 10 this year, but I just really like this top 10. I think maybe because, 2020, sucked in a lot of ways. But, for me, movies are always something that get me through. And I think, movies were a bright spot in 2020. And there were quite a few good ones, a lot of good mixture. And my top 10 this year, it's all over the place in a way that I'm really enjoying. I mean, there's horror in there, science fiction, comedy, there's a family film, there's documentaries, stage adaptations, films about music. My top 10 is like really cool this year. I really like it. Huh?
Diverse?
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the things is I made a little bit more of a conscious decision to not exclude films just because I didn't think they were, top 10 material or something like that. I just went with, no, these are the 10 movies that, made my day the most in 2020. And that's, as a result, I really like my top 10. But I mean, of course I miss theaters and all that, but, for movies that I didn't see any of these in a theater, which I would have, but, for a lot of movies that I saw at home, they're really, really good, I think. How about you?
Yeah, same. I don't watch nearly as many movies as you do a year. I mean, obviously with this show that we've been doing, I've been watching a lot more movies. So just generally, the more movies you watch, the more movies you're going to like in general. But overall, considering all the big blockbuster movies or the big movies that are clearly going for Oscars and that kind of stuff. A lot of those movies seem like they didn't really come out this year is my general, because I saw how many movies got pushed back for 2021. And so, so that was always kind of concerned that like the quality of films wouldn't be that good, but we were still able to find quite a few films that we both loved and we both enjoyed. I know you gave a few films like 5 out of 5 stars, which is kind of our grading scale. There weren't any films that I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I don't know if there would have been necessarily, even if all the films had came out this year. I can't say one way or another. I'm sure there would have been some films that, ranked higher than the ones that are on my list, obviously. But, I gave quite a few films, or a few films anyways, 4 out of 5, which is pretty good for me. I mean, outside of like, anytime a Quentin Tarantino drops a film or just an occasional film, there's very few films these days that I give 5 stars to. So, so if I gave 3 or 4 films 4 out of 5, that's a pretty solid year for me overall. And, I had a top, I did my list and I think I came up with like a top like 21 this year, which is usually pretty good because I do know that in previous years, I don't know about like last year, but like, I don't know, say 2008, 2009, like some of those years, I felt like I struggled a little bit more to do like even a top 20, you know what I mean? Usually it settled right around like a top 15 or top 16 and then everything else was like 3 stars and below, you know what I mean? I prefer to have a year where I have like a top 20 and everything is generally like 3.5 or above if I can, you know what I mean? Or there were really, really strong 3-star films that, I just really, really liked and wanted to make sure I included it. So, but similar to you, I mean, I got a lot on my list. There's, some docs on here. There's like I said, there's action, there's, which is always the case, horror, movies that are kind of more of like plays and that, so it is kind of a wide range of films that we did watch this year. And obviously doing this show, I think made a big difference for us also because, we're probably both watching a few more films because we're always looking for films now that we want to watch and knock out for the show. So I think that helped out in some capacity for me because usually I would just watch what I want to see, you know what I mean? But this year we kind of went for films that obviously we wanted to see, but we were also just scouring and looking for films that got good, decent reviews that we could watch on a week-to-week basis in order to do the show and do the podcast. So I think that made a big difference for us this year, in my opinion. I don't know about for you, but I feel like that did make a difference because there were a lot of films that I may not have seen otherwise, because they were streaming. Granted, some of these films might have came out in theaters, so who's to say? But, I don't feel like I would have seen every film that I saw this year or last year. It hadn't it been for the quarantine. You know what I mean? Because I would have just went for the cream of the crop, or films that
or
I heard of,
what looked like the cream of the crop anyway.
or what looked like exactly, or what looked like the cream of the crop. You know what I mean? The films that clearly were everybody was talking about, gross a decent amount of money at the box office. I usually don't have like always huge blockbusters on my list, but there's always a couple at least, 2 or 3 big blockbuster films that I like usually during the year, like a Mission Impossible or something of that nature will usually make my top 10 if it's good. So there wasn't a whole lot of obviously the big blockbusters, except for at the beginning of the year. And coincidentally, I do have a few of those that came out at the beginning of the year before COVID. So
don't forget Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah, that would have been a huge blockbuster that's not going to be on my list anywhere close.
No, me neither.
But cool. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was like I said, it was a very interesting year, very challenging year overall. Not just for movie's sake. I mean, there's still some uncertainty about theaters coming back even in 2021, what that looks like. But it looks like for at least the first half of the year, we're sitting in for another year of mostly watching films that are going to be streaming and not actually going to the theaters. I don't know whether you subscribe to whatever the scientists say, but Dr. Fauci, who's, kind of the world-renowned one on this, doesn't feel like we're going to be back to any sense of normalcy until fall, which I'm guessing is probably pretty accurate. So I don't think we're going to be seeing too many more films in theaters, at least into the fall. You know what I mean?
In time for a Halloween party, though.
This is true. This is true. If you're going to host a Halloween party that we go to, then it would definitely right in time for that. So I don't know what theaters look like this year. Most of the big budget movies that I've seen, they've already kind of went all in with like HBO Max or going to Netflix or Amazon, or just going, straight to video and charging you like $20 a pop is what most of the big films that I've seen for this year looks like. So we'll see what that does for 2021 and years beyond, because I feel like there are going to be a lot of studios that may like that or prefer that method, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with that moving forward. We had a discussion about this in another show, but I say without further ado, we just get right into it, man. So let's go ahead and kick it off. We'll start with your number 10 film of 2020. So I'll go ahead and bring that in. And your number 10 film of 2020 is going to be Love and Monsters.
Yeah, Love and Monsters. Really, really fun movie. To me, this has got it's just a really fun premise. It takes place post some sort of, I guess you could say, not apocalyptic event, kind of. Basically, the world has been destroyed by giant insects. And there are a few bands of survivors here and there. And to me, that's a great idea. I mean, I've seen lots of movies about giant insects, but they're not as big of a deal as they used to be. So it was kind of fun seeing a movie about giant insects again for the first time in, I don't know, 30 years or something. But it's just a really fun movie. It's got really good effects. It's got fun characters. It's got a snappy pace. It's exciting. It's just a really fun movie. And if there's one problem with it, I wish there had been even more monsters, because we don't get to see quite as many different kinds of monsters as I was expecting, maybe. But considering that it seems to be pretty successful, hopefully we'll get a sequel with more, because I would definitely like to see more in this world, this setting. But yeah, if you like giant bugs, and who doesn't? Love and Monsters is highly, highly recommendable. It was one of the most entertaining movies I saw this year or last year.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree as well. I definitely enjoyed Love and Monsters quite a bit. It didn't make my top 10 for this year. Probably just missed my honorable mentions. It would be in my top 20, which, like I said, I did a top 21 this year. So that means I did really, really like it. It just missed the cut. And I have some of the same issues you had. I would have liked to seen a few more monsters. you know, I guess my gripe was that they were talking about like, you know, like all the bugs pretty much grew like giant and that kind of stuff. And, you know, this kid goes on like this 4-day journey and you see like 5 bugs maybe the entire journey, which I know couldn't be possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's kind of nitpicky, but you know, it did. There were definitely stretches where I saw like no bugs for quite some time, and I just feel like if it was realistic, we'd be seeing bugs more often, or more different types of bugs and that sort of stuff. Is my only small gripe with it. But no, great film. Definitely one that I urge anyone to check out or watch. And obviously a really good choice for a top 10 for sure. Not going to fight you on that one.
It's good for families too. You know, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
it's something that maybe not for the smallest of children, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but it's not really that scary. To me, it's like the perfect amount of scariness for kids, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still fun and engaging for adults. So
I agree. I think that's a fair assessment.
It's a good family movie without being a family movie. If that makes sense.
Exactly. It's still got enough thrills for adults, but it's not going to like, shouldn't scare your 8-year-old. You know what I mean? Shouldn't anyways, but it possibly could. But no, great choice though. Great choice. Moving on to my number 10. So my number 10, and I've referenced this movie quite a bit over the last few shows, so it's clearly one that I really enjoy. It only ended up number 10, but I definitely did like it quite a bit. My number 10 is actually going to be The Rental. So one that I really enjoyed. Like I said, I'm always a big fan of I mean, I like horror. I don't like horror quite as much as you do. But this is almost like 2 films in a way, because it's like one of those films that I really love good dialogue, scenes, and sequences. And this film, four couples basically, renting this house, this Airbnb or whatever case may be, and engaging in really good conversation. There's some seediness going on with the couples, but outside of that, there's also this really terrifying something going on, and that they're being watched. Somebody's watching them. You don't know exactly who it is, but that somebody's watching them. Meanwhile, they're also dealing with their own conflict and things of that nature while somebody's actually watching them. And so I really like that story. I like the way that the story unfolded. I like the, I had a small gripe with the very, very end of it. But other than that, I really thought it was a really solid film. And I have heard some people complain that the horror doesn't kick in until way too late, which I guess is a fair comparison, or a fair point if that's something that you want to call it. Because it isn't like your typical horror movie where, the film starts off and, there's horror going on like immediately. It's like subtle, it's like little things are happening. So it's kind of like, I don't want to say a slow burn, because it's not really slow, but it is a slower paced horror movie, if you will. Like I said, it's not the kind of movie where as soon as the screen starts, somebody's getting murdered immediately, or, you know what I mean? Things are constantly happening immediately. It's very slow how things and methodical things, but something eerie is going on in the background. And that's just kind of what I loved about that one. I thought it was a really good thriller. I thought it had great conversation. It was very interesting. And I mean, I guess it's the kind of film that you can make a sequel to if you wanted to. I don't know if it needs one, but overall, I thought it was a really good film. I definitely enjoyed it. So that was my number 10, The Rental.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one a lot. It's not in my top 10, but I enjoyed it a lot. And I don't think that the horror kicks in too late, because like, you're right. I mean, it's interesting the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I love a movie that can just kind of slowly kind of ratchet up the tension, just very subtly. And this movie definitely did that. And the acting is really good. The dialogue is really good. If I had one quibble, it's that when the horror does kick in, I wish they would have milked it a little bit more. It seems like once the horror kicks in, it's over too quick after that.
I guess that's what I mean that I've heard in the past, is that people complain that it took a while for the horror to kick in. And then when it kicks in, it's like 10 minutes of just complete mayhem or complete horror. and then it's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know,
I think it's a little more than 10 minutes, but not by a whole lot.
you know, I read some commentary somewhere where they equated to like a roller coaster ride. You're waiting in line for like 2 hours for this ride, and you know, it's a fun ride. You enjoyed it, but you're like, man, that ride was quick.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I felt about the film in some capacity. But overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good film, and like I said, obviously, it'd be my top number 10 for 2020, and one that I've already bought the Blu-ray of it as well. So yeah, definitely one that I plan to revisit real soon here. So cool.
I think it's cool that it's the directorial debut of Dave Franco too.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I never, you know, I mean, of course, you know, anybody can be a horror fan, but you know, he's been in all comedies.
Yeah,
so I would have never.
Brother been in more like comedic performances. So it always is interesting when you see guys make a turn for directing and they do like something, you know, completely outside of what they normally act in. And I always think that that's kind of funny.
And do it well.
Yeah, do it well. Similar to like Halloween that came out a few years back with the directors and producers of that film. They were kind of more comedic type actors and stuff. They had the one guy from like The Office, I think, or I forget who was all in that, but there was more. They weren't like horror guys necessarily. So.
Oh yeah. You mean Danny McBride?
Yeah, and
yeah, he wrote. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the director who he's made dramas and stuff before, but never any comedies. And he made Pineapple Express.
Exactly.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Is what I mean. Yeah. So exactly. So that's gonna, you know, so it's kind of in that same kind of vein. So yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So that was my number 10. And moving on to your number 9, and I'll bring that in. Your number 9 film is gonna be Soul.
Soul, yes. Soul is the new Pixar movie. You know, everybody knows Pixar. Most of their films have been really great, and I think this one is no exception. It's about a jazz musician who, right on the cusp of achieving his lifelong dream of being a professional musician for a living, is injured and basically almost dies. That doesn't make it sound like a family film, I know, but basically it strands him in this place between kind of the real world and the afterlife, and the whole movie is about him trying to get back to his body, essentially, which makes it sound pretty dark for a kid's film, and I guess it is. But I mean, Pixar, they know how to handle the heavy themes and make it, kid friendly and feel like fantasy more than like a downer. And I think Soul is great. I think that it's absolutely beautiful to look at. The music's great. You know, I'm a big jazz fan. The voice acting is great. It's great. To me, like, it's not quite in that upper echelon with like WALL-E and Up and the Toy Story movies, but it's not far below that. You know, if it was with those, it'd probably be in the top half of my top 10, but as it is, it's in the lower half of my top 10, but it's something I would definitely not hesitate to watch again anytime, really. So, my number 9 is definitely Soul.
Cool. Yeah, I like Soul. I didn't like it nearly as much as you did, and I kind of agree with your second point there, or second sentiment, that it's not up there with the upper echelon of the other Pixar films. I thought it was okay. I thought it was good. You know, I didn't dislike it. I think I gave it 3 out of 5. I didn't dislike it. It just didn't make my top 10 or honorable mentions or anything like that. I didn't think there was anything like that special about it personally. In terms of films about like death and stuff like that, I actually prefer Coco over this one, just in my personal opinion.
Good.
But I thought this one was okay. It was a decent film. I didn't have any major gripes with it. It just didn't, like you said, it just wasn't up there with like the WALL-E's and Toy Stories and any of those kinds of films. It just didn't quite rise to that level for me. Like I said, it
better
is
than Cars though.
What's that?
Better than Cars though, right?
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it over for sure. I think that's definitely. But yeah, I mean, it's not the worst, that's for sure. I mean, but yeah, it doesn't quite rise to that level for me to put it in my top 10 or anything of that nature. But not a bad film. But good choice. Cool. All right. So that was your number 9. Moving on to my number 9, which I already know you're not a big fan of. But It's my number 9 anyway, so we're gonna bring it on in. My number 9 is actually going to be Extraction. So if you're an action junkie like myself, and people that I know that like action, they love this film actually, and I'm not alone in that. Yeah, and I've showed it to like other members of my family, even my parents. I was out in Georgia for a few weeks ago. I showed it to my dad. He just couldn't get enough of it. He wanted to watch it again almost immediately. And it's just like one of those films. It's just like action packed from beginning to end. So if you're an action junkie, I mean, this hits all the right notes. It's got cool fight scenes, cool shooting, great action, good villains, and it's just, it's like basically one man wrecking crew against like a whole, like pretty much city that's out to kill him. And he's like having to fight his way to survive to save like this boy. And it's just like one of those films that like once the action starts, it pretty much doesn't stop. You know what I mean? It doesn't let up for a second. It's just pretty much just boom, boom, boom. I mean, the body count is high. But it's better acting, a better story than say like your typical like Rambo picture where he's just out just killing people and running and making weird noises the entire time. This one is it's a little bit more educated, I feel like, than say like a Rambo type picture. And not to knock Rambo, because I know people love those and those are staples, but I don't know. This one's just a really fun action film. This is like my third time watching it already, and I don't know. It's definitely one that I will continue to watch all the time. I don't know if I'll be able to get it on DVD because it's a Netflix film, but we'll see how that goes. But definitely, the only problem with Netflix films is kind of hard to like get them on Blu-ray. So, but maybe someday, maybe they'll release it someday, and I can own it as well. Otherwise, I can just get it from Netflix, I guess. So, but that is number 9, Extraction.
Cool. Yeah. It was okay. It just wasn't, I love action movies. But, I'm not as much of a action junkie as like you said yourself was, but it was fine. I just didn't see anything too special in it. The main character was just kind of blank slate kind of. And, I don't know. I've seen other action movies that hit all the marks, like you said, but they just also threw a little bit something special in there, and I didn't think this one brought anything new, really. So, I mean, I didn't not enjoy watching it. It just kind of went in one ear, out the other, kind of.
Understood. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And like I said, and if you're listening or watching, we're not expected to agree on all these films, and I think that kind of what makes it fun, because we have obviously different takes and different tastes, different personalities, and what we gravitate towards. So, but cool. That's a fair Steve. So, all right, perfect. And then moving on to your number 8 film, we're moving right along. I'll bring that in for you. Your number 8 film is going to be Zappa.
Yep, Zappa. So this is the first of 3 documentaries that actually made my list. Well, one of them is not, it's kind of borderline documentary, but we'll get to that later. So this is a documentary about Frank Zappa, who I'm a big fan of. And it's directed by Alex Winter. Not the first time his name will pop up on this list for me. I didn't even realize until this year that Alex Winter, in the 30 years that it took to get a 4th Bill and Ted movie made, he actually has become a director of some pretty acclaimed documentaries. And one of them I had even seen, and I didn't realize it was an Alex Winter documentary. But this is his latest documentary. Hello?
Well, yeah, what was that?
Oh, it was a movie called Downloaded. It was a movie about the history of Napster. I don't know if you watched that, but it was good. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Frank Zappa. I thought this was a little bit better than your average musical bio documentary, because there's a million of those, but I think this one's a little special. I think it digs a little deeper, and it's not quite as although it's obviously made by people who are interested in Frank Zappa. It's not just a hagiographical cut out all the bad parts kind of documentary. It's just a really engaging documentary. It's well made, well edited. It's definitely one of the best movie watching experiences I had this year. So that's why it's in here. That's number 8, Zappa.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I liked it for what it was, and admittedly, I'm not a big fan of Zappa, and from what I've heard from the documentary, his music, it's not the kind of music I would gravitate towards or anything of that nature. So it just wasn't for me. I mean, obviously, he was an interesting guy. He lived an interesting life as far as like his music career and politics, and then he was obviously a composer and that sort of stuff. So he did live an interesting life. I always feel like with films like this, you almost have to be kind of invested in the person a little bit in order to really, really, enjoy it, or be invested at least in the music or something of that nature to really, really experience it the way that a fan would. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier if you're already a fan going into it to love a movie like this versus not really knowing a whole lot about him, never really heard his music before. You're either going to have to listen to some of the music that they played in the movie and be like, "Ooh, I really like that." You know what I mean? But if you're not really into rock music or that type of music, then maybe it's not going to be something that you enjoy quite as much as someone that was already a fan, basically, I guess is the best way to put it. So like I said, I didn't have any major qualms with the film itself. It just wasn't my speed. It wasn't my type of music. And although he was an interesting person, and I'll definitely say that if you're a fan of the music or you're just a fan of watching someone that lived a kind of an interesting life, definitely check it out. But like I said, just didn't make my top 10 or anything of that nature. So cool. All right. Moving right along, we're going pretty quick. Going to my number 8 is actually going to be #alive. So that was a movie that I thought might pop up in your countdown somewhere, but because it's horror, it's a little bit more your speed. But clearly, this is a horror film. It's not the most original horror film that I've ever seen about zombies, obviously, but I don't know. I just enjoyed it. It's obviously a Korean foreign film, basically about a boy who kind of watches the beginning of the zombie apocalypse kind of unfold while he's like alone in his apartment building, and he's basically stuck there because outside is just people are like eating each other and dying and being killed and all turning into like these whatever you want to call them, zombies, rabid people, whatever you want to call it. I just say zombies because it's the easiest for me. And then the same thing's going on, like basically right outside of his building, and he's having to fight people off. And so it's like one of those films where he's pretty much alone for most of the movie. Obviously he does experience and run into other people in the second half of the film, but for the most part he's alone and scared. And it's kind of it kind of does put you in that situation of like, what would you do if, there was this, infected rabies zombie type people outbreak, right in front of you in your apartment complex, you know what I mean? And they're in the building, they're right outside. You've got people trying to get into your door to like look for shelter, and you don't want to let them in because you don't know if they're infected or not. So it's like one of those films of like, I always put myself in situations like, I don't know what I would do in that situation. I guess I'd just honor because he seemed he was relatively intelligent, like able to like build like radio transmitters and things of that nature. I don't know how to do that stuff, you know what I mean? I'm like, you know what I mean? And the water, and that's the other thing, his power is getting shut off, the water's being cut off, he's having to limit himself on food rationings and basically resorting to drinking alcohol to keep himself semi-hydrated, which probably dehydrates you even more. So I just thought it was an interesting tale or interesting take on, like a zombie or an outbreak type movie. I mean, like I said, there's other films and almost all films at some point, that's kind of what you do is you hunker down in a place, but usually there's other people with you when you're hunkering down, where you're at a mall, or anything of that nature. But being stuck in an apartment watching like this outbreak unfold, I thought was an interesting take, and that's why it kind of ended up as number 8 on my countdown. So.
Oh yeah, I really like that movie a lot. It's definitely among many runner-ups for me this year. There's a lot of zombie movies. My favorite. I love zombie movies. My favorite movie of all time is a zombie movie. But even I am at this point. When I hear of a new zombie movie coming out, I'm just like, how is it going to be different? You know what I mean? And this one, while it hits all the marks, you know what I mean, but it does it in a pretty unique way. And also, as I've always said, you can have the most cliched story in the world, the most cliched storyline, but if you do it well, if you write characters that are interesting, and if you put them in situations that are that get your attention and get you to care, it doesn't matter how unoriginal the storyline is. It can still be just as thrilling as the first time you saw it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So this movie it's just a really fun movie. It's suspenseful. It's got great characters. It gets you involved, even if you think you've seen a million zombie movies and what could this possibly add. It's the million and first zombie movie, but it's a good one. You know what I mean? So yeah, I loved it. Not my top 10, but I loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. It definitely hits all the marks. It definitely is. And me, I get tired of zombie movies as well. I mean, it's just like ever since, I mean, maybe even a little bit before that, but pretty much The Walking Dead and after, everything's been zombie this, and there's been like at least one or two zombie movies that have come out like almost every single year, since basically the Walking Dead first premiered. You know what I mean? It was like everybody just kind of jumped on that hype train, and and a lot of them are really good. You know what I mean? And if they're good, they're good. I'm gonna like them. But even like you, I do get a little like, it's got to offer something a little bit different than all the other zombie movies are offering. This one's more in the same vein of like Train to Busan, because it's kind of those same type of zombies where you don't turn instantly, but it's not like 2 or 3 days before you turn. You know what I mean? So there's always that. So, and they're the fast moving zombies, which I kind of tend to prefer. I know you like the slow moving ones. I usually prefer the fast moving ones, which I guess technically aren't really zombies because they're like infected usually in those ones. But I do tend to prefer the fast moving ones personally. I just feel like that adds an extra level of terrifying suspense for me. I do see the argument the other way, but I like the fast moving ones. So, and these ones are like intelligent also. They can like climb up stuff and that kind of stuff. So that also makes that extra terrifying element as well. So, but cool.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. We are moving right along to number 7.
Yep.
And your number 7, I'll bring that in, is going to be The Five Bloods.
Yep. This was one of 2 Spike Lee movies this year. The endlessly prolific Spike Lee. I'm a big Spike Lee fan. I've always been a big Spike Lee fan. As with almost any director, not everything he's made is gold, but and this is not one of his greatest movies, I think, but it's definitely one of the best movies I saw this year. It's quite an original movie. It's kind of a war movie, but not really. It's more about some veterans going back to Vietnam to find the body of their comrade that they buried there, as well as a treasure. So it's kind of a treasure hunt movie, kind of a war movie in flashback, but it's also about all these, it's about America's place in the war. It's about Vietnam's place in the war and the legacy, the legacy that was left after the war. It's a treasure hunt movie. It's all over the place. It's an action movie. It's all over the place in true Spike Lee fashion. It's a little bit messy, a little bit over, it's long and messy, but I got to hand it to Spike Lee. He's one of the few filmmakers who really, hits for the fences every single time. And it doesn't always land, but it's always definitely a Spike Lee movie. And this one, it's got a really terrific cast, especially Clark Peters and Delroy Lindo are terrific in it. It looks great. It's just a really good movie. If you're a Spike Lee fan, then you've probably already seen it. But if you haven't, definitely check it out. And even if you don't think you're a Spike Lee fan, maybe give it a shot, because I think it's got a story that pulls you in pretty quick, I think. So yeah, I love it. One of my favorites of the year for sure.
Cool. Yeah, we talked about this. Well, we talked about all these films actually. So, but actually, well, there's a couple on my countdown that we hadn't really talked about because it was before we started the show. But yeah, I like The Five Bloods. I thought it was overly messy, and I know your argument is that Spike Lee's always messy, but I don't always get that feel from him. Black Klansman, I didn't feel like was messy. There's been other films that he's made where I just thought they were just really, really good films and the best films of the year. This one I felt like was more messy than some of his other films, in my opinion. It kind of is all over the place. You know, the storyline kind of takes all these different twists and turns, and it was just a little much for me overall. I didn't dislike it. I think I gave it 3 out of 5, I believe, but it just didn't make my top 10. I just thought it was decent, but it was, for me, it was more the forgettable Spike Lee films. You know, the ones that, you know, okay, you know, because he makes tons of films. You know what I mean? Let's be honest. He did 2 films this year, for 2020. I mean, he makes tons of films, and this was one of the ones where, you know, not saying it's a throwaway film because it does have some value to it, but it's one of the ones that I probably wouldn't revisit again. I just thought it was okay and left it at that. I'm gonna watch, you know, some of his more prolific stuff, Malcolm X or Black Klansman or whatever case may be, over this one personally. So, but he definitely always does make a statement, and I do have to give him that. And it is refreshing to have a director that is always making a statement, whether it be about race or controversy or politics or whatever case may be. So I do like that about Spike Lee and about the majority of his films. They almost always are making some sort of statement. So I do like that, and this film makes a statement as well. So yeah, if you're a fan of Spike Lee, definitely urge you to check it out. Or just if you're a fan of movies in general, just check out all these films. Who knows? And come up with your own opinion. So maybe you love it more than both of us. Maybe it's your number 1 film of the year. I don't know. But yeah, not a bad choice. Like I said, just didn't make my top 10 or anything. So cool. All right, moving on to my number 7. And I'll bring that in, and that's going to be The Trial of Chicago 7. So yeah, I really enjoyed this film. I just thought it was a really I didn't know much about the story. You know, if anybody doesn't know, it's basically about a group of people that they some of them knew each other, but not all of them knew each other. But basically, a group of 7, technically 8 people that they basically, during the 1968 Democratic Convention. I think that was the year. It was like the 68 Democratic Convention, and these different groups of activists were there at the convention. And basically, they are all being basically complicit or charged with basically inciting basically a riot at the National Convention. And so they're all on trial. They've all got their own take about, why they're there or whether they actually incited a riot and that kind of stuff. So it's a very interesting film. It's like, what I liked about it is it feels, when I first saw it, I thought it was going to be like the stuffy courtroom drama, because predominantly most of the film does take place in a courtroom, but it's really funny, actually. There's like very funny, because they have a very absent-minded judge. All the people that are on trial are very interesting characters. And it brings in a lot of really, there's a lot of famous people that are on that trial, head of the Black Klansman and, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of really famous, influential people that are at this trial. And some of them maybe became famous because of the trial as well. I don't know how famous they were back in 68, but very interesting film. Very interesting about like the justice system and how people can get like caught up and railroaded just because, people are after them and want them basically to go down or take the fall for, whatever events that happened at a riot or at some sort of movement or they got out of control or got out of hand, which is very poignant when you look at like, even today, you look at what happened at the Capitol, you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be on trial and facing jail time and stuff like that. And, and it's like, it's one of those fine lines of, how many people, they've already arrested like over 100 people for that. Do they all go to jail? Are they all bad people? Are they all, what I mean? Like, were they all part of or complicit in that? And you know what I mean? So it's kind of that same kind of vein, basically. So it is very interesting. And I think that if you watch that, you can see some parallels to what's going on right now as well. So, but that was my number 7. Yeah. Trial of the Chicago 7 is my number 7. Just worked out that way.
Yeah.
I didn't plan for it to be that way, but that's the way it worked out.
So. Sure. That's a really good movie. Another one that's in, quite a long list if I was to name all the quote unquote runner-ups for this year. But yeah, it's really good. It's got that zippy Aaron Sorkin script. A lot of really good performances, especially Sacha Baron Cohen, I thought, as Abby Hoffman. Yeah, it's just it's a real good movie. It didn't make my top 10, but it's definitely one of many movies from last year that I think are well worth anybody's time for sure.
Absolutely. Cool. Enough on that. Moving into your number 6, we're almost halfway done.
Yeah.
Let me bring that in. Okay. Right. So your number six for you is going to be Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Yep, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It is. It's based on the August Wilson play, starring Chadwick Boseman and Viola Davis as the real life singer Ma Rainey. This is. I'm pretty sure it's a fairly fictionalized view of one day in a recording studio with her. But it's based on a play, so it definitely feels a little stagey, but in a way that, typically, I don't mind when movies feel stagey. I usually don't mind that because I'm not really, you might be surprised, but I'm not really that big of a fan of live theater in general. So I kind of like that. I feel like I've been to a play, but that I get the benefit of sitting on my couch and, getting alternate camera angles and some actually filmmaking style in there, So to me, I'll take that over the actual live theater experience. And I know that's like blasphemy to some people, but I think it's a really great, it's extremely well acted. Unfortunately, it's Chadwick Boseman's last performance, but even though it's unfortunate, he definitely went out with one of his best performances, I think. And yeah, it's got great music in it, great acting. It's got that great kind of ambiguous ending that most great stage plays have. But yeah, it's a really, really good movie and definitely well worth checking out.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I agree. I love this movie. I thought it was great. Like I said, it definitely is in my top 10. It'll be a little bit up the list as well. Like you said, I'm not a big play person either. It's just never been my thing, even though I kind of minored in like film and stuff like that. So I had to watch plays and all kinds of stuff like that. But theater's never been really my jam, I guess, if you will. Although, my fiance will definitely drag me to an occasional play. Usually the best ones, the Hamiltons or, Book of Mormon, that kind of stuff. But I just can't watch all of them. And I'm not a big fan of a lot of theater plays have a lot of music, and I'm not a big fan of musical type plays either. So this one does have music in it, but it's definitely not a musical. So it's because she's recording a cut of an album, recording an album basically live. So it's not really a musical per se. But I don't know. I thought the acting was great. I thought Viola Davis was amazing. Chadwick Boseman, like you already alluded to, this was his last performance, but honestly, I do think it was one of his best. He's done a lot of good performance because he's done a lot of biopics, in his life. Like I said, he was Jackie Robinson, he was James Brown, and he was great in all those films as well. His performance was good, but I didn't like those films quite as much as I liked Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So it's like it's always kind of his performance was good in those films, but I like this film better. And like I said, it is a play, but it doesn't have like that super play feel, and it is kind of set primarily in this recording studio, and so it is kind of set there primarily. But the conversations and the monologues that are giving are just really, really good. Like I said, it is just a really, really good film for sure. So great choice.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I have had a lot of really great live theater experiences. It's just I'm always more into the camera work, editing, cinematography. I love that.
We're movie guys, man. We like movies. I mean, I know you're more of an avid reader than I am, but I've always been. People are, oh, you should really read the book if you like this movie kind of thing. You know what I mean? And for me, I've always been more of a no, I got to see the performance, on the big screen or on TV or whatever case may be. So I feel the same way about a play or something like that. I'm sure if there was a play that was going on right now on the circuit right now of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, we watch the movie, there'd be somebody telling you, man, that's good. You should check out the play. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm sure it would be great.
Yeah, which is fine. You know what I mean? I'm sure the books are good as well. You know what I mean? But I'm not an avid reader. I don't typically, feel like I have the time to sit down and dedicate myself to a book. So I'm always going to watch the movie. A play is a little different, but obviously with a book, you know what I mean? It's going to take me, days, months, whatever it's going to take, to read the book versus a 2-hour movie, and I'm, done. So, so I don't know, if you're asking me which I'd rather do, I'm probably watching the movie over that. So, but no, same thing though. So cool. All right, well, moving right along to my number 6. Bring that in. My number 6 is going to be Bad Boys for Life. So one of the films that came out way earlier in the year for last year that I actually saw in theaters.
So did I.
One of the last few films. There's actually a few more in this countdown actually that I saw in theaters, but one of the last few films that I saw in theaters. I know that we both like part 1. I like part 2. You hated part 2. But I know we both generally like this one as well. This one's really good. I personally would prefer this one over part 2. But I didn't like it quite as good as the first one personally. No, I definitely enjoyed this one. I thought it was fun. What I liked about it is, most action buddy cop movies, they seem somewhat invincible, but in this one they're kind of aging, and they're reality is kind of setting in that they're not able to do things that the way they've been able to do them in the past, kind of thing. They're kind of nearing retirement, if you will. And so I like that. Reality's kind of setting in for these guys. It was kind of similar to one of the Lethal Weapon films where they were both saying, I'm getting too old for this. You know what I mean? But that one wasn't as good of a film. I think it was Lethal Weapon 5 or something. I don't remember. But this one I definitely enjoyed. I thought the story was pretty good. It had a lot of really good fight scenes. It was funny, but it had a lot of really good action scenes and fight scenes and that sort of stuff. And so definitely, it makes me okay, well, let's get a part 4 in there and see what happens. So that ended up being my number 6, number 6 film of the year. And I'm a Bad Boys for Life fan. So
yeah, I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. Because I did enjoy the first one quite a bit. The second one I really did not like, to put it mildly. And then that was the last one for, however many years. So, the fact that they were bringing it back, I really didn't know which way it would go. Would it be, would I like it? Would I hate it? And I liked it a lot. I liked it. I haven't seen the original in, probably 15 years or more. Honestly.
Yeah, I just recently watched it. I don't know, maybe a few months back. So. But yeah.
And it still holds up pretty well?
Yeah, I mean, it's still.
In my head, it seems like one that wouldn't. In my head, it seems like one that wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, it does for me. I mean, everything feels a little, I hate to say dated, but, it's like one of those movies. It's an action comedy, so it's not like it's, changing the world or anything like that. No. Not that films necessarily have to. I feel the same way about horror films. Once I've seen it a few times, unless it's one of the top echelon ones, if I go back and revisit again and I already know the suspense and the thrills and that sort of stuff, I don't know if I'm still as scared or still you know what I mean? It's the same, I guess, with an action comedy. So.
Yeah. But I did really like it. I thought both of, Martin Lawrence and Will Smith were both really good. It actually handled the whole aging thing fairly well, pretty, it didn't just make it jokes out of it. It actually took it kind of seriously.
Yeah.
And it was also just a really good action movie. And it's one of the last movies, I saw in theaters. It was before the pandemic hit last year, which means it seems like it was about 1 million years ago.
I know. I was looking at my top 10. I'm like, man, a lot of these films that are in my top 10 that weren't, that I saw actually in the theaters, it feels like I saw 20 years ago. You know what I mean? Pandemic lasted for so long, it just feels like forever ago. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these films that I saw that were in January, February, and the beginning of March, that were in my top 10, they were and I'm surprised they're still in my top 10, because of how many films I've seen. But it was weird when I go back through my list. I'm like, wow, I was like, that came out last year, really?
Yeah.
But it did. So.
Yeah, crazy.
Cool. All right, moving on to your number 5. Actually, we're almost halfway there. So bring this down. Go ahead and start. I just got to grab something real quick, so I'll be on in just a second here. So, but your number 5 is actually going to be Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Yes. Bill and Ted Face the Music. It is. I think I talked about it in the show we talked about with the show we reviewed the movie. I waited as a huge Bill and Ted fan since I was a little kid. The first one came out when I was 10. I've waited over 30 years for this to actually happen, and I spent many years thinking it would never happen, but finally they made a third Bill and Ted movie, and I couldn't wait. And maybe I went in already loving it, you could say, but to me it hit all the marks that I wanted any Bill and Ted movie to hit. It's really funny. It's really imaginative. I went back and watched it a second time a few days later, and I enjoyed it every bit as much, if not even more. So basically, there's almost no way I was gonna not love this movie, but even under those circumstances, I truly enjoyed it. And it came in the summertime of 2020 when I think everybody needed a little pick-me-up. And for me, it was that pick-me-up. It's a movie that makes you feel good about humanity. You know what I mean? And the power of positive thinking. So, yeah, easily, that's my number 5 movie of the year. One of my favorites, for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I liked Bill and Ted's Face the Music quite a bit. I thought it was fun. I thought it was funny. I've never been as big of a Bill and Ted's fan as you have been, I guess. But I definitely thought this one was really good. I don't know if it was good as good as the first film, but definitely better than the second one, in my opinion. So, I didn't care for what was that one called? Bill and Ted what?
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, man. It's great.
Yeah, I didn't care for that one, and most people don't.
That's not true. That's not true.
A lot of people don't. Let's put it that way. The reviews weren't even that good.
The reviews were actually better for the second one from critics. I mean,
than the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I don't know. They weren't great. I know that, but yeah, this one was. I hate to say they were more adult in this one, but obviously it was kind of like Bad Boys for Life. They were kind of
actually, yeah, you're right.
Their age and they were getting older, and it was like kind of time to start like growing up, and so it's kind of in that same kind of vein, you know what I mean, is Bad Boys for Life in a way, because they were they were, like I said, they were getting older basically, so it was kind of the same. So that's I guess that's just how I felt about it anyways. So but I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I can't necessarily say that I loved it as much as you did, but I definitely did like it. So it's definitely, I think I gave it like 3 out of 5. So it was definitely one that like I said, I enjoyed but just didn't love. So
I think you gave it 3.5 out of 5 actually.
Maybe it was 3.5. I don't know. It didn't make my top 10. I can tell you that much. It didn't make my top 10. So, yeah. so.
Whatever.
Cool. All right. Anything else you want to add about Bill and Ted Face the Music?
Nope.
All right. Then I shall bring in my number 5, which is going to be. We're in 5, right? Yeah, we're in 5. Which is going to be The Hunt. Oops. I actually removed it. There we go. So, which is The Hunt. I really enjoyed The Hunt. I thought it was just like a really fun, just action comedy, satire, if you will. And I don't know, I just kind of love those kind of films where, like I said, there is that kind of satirical element to it, but also has really good action. And it's kind of like, it's the film that's kind of like making fun of liberals and Republicans, or liberals and conservatives, I guess, if you will, because they're both kind of evil, but in different ways. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I really liked about that film, is they're both like, neither one of those groups are good people. And and it's basically, the general premise of The Hunt is basically a group of liberals, if you will, have this game where they basically kidnap a group of like conservatives and kind of like start like trying to kill them basically. So and so you're kind of watching the film and you're thinking like, well, who are the bad people in this? Is it the conservatives or is it the liberals? And they're both bad. You know what I mean? They're both bad. But it's a fun film. It's funny in a lot of parts, and it's like one of those really, really unpredictable films, because in the beginning you're seeing these people like they had like some decent named stars in the very beginning, and you're watching it and you're like trying to figure out who's the main character going to be, and then all of a sudden they just get killed. You're like, what? That person, like, who's the main star of this film? You know what I mean? So it's really, really interesting, and it's got some really, really good fight scenes. It's got some really funny social commentary. And like I said, I just love this film quite a bit. It's just a lot of fun. It's got like one of the best female fights I've seen in quite some time. I mean, nothing tops the Kill Bill ones, but it's got some of the best female fights I've seen in a really long time. And I don't know, it's just a really, really fun film in my opinion. So that is my number 5, The Hunt.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I liked it a lot. It's another one that would be, in my long list of runner-ups if I was going to name them all, which you probably don't want me to. But yeah, it was really enjoyable. You and I both really like movies where people are kind of thrust into like a deadly game situation. Where they're having to, as part of somebody else's game, they're being forced to fight for their lives. I love that kind of stuff. And that always mixes well with satire, be it Death Race 2000, The Running Man. It's those always make for good, like future shock satire kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I agree.
But yeah, it's really entertaining. It was better than I thought it would be, and not that I didn't think it was good. It's just like a movie that's that out there with its satire. Sometimes it can be, just kind of overbearing and suck all the fun out of it and just be. In my opinion, the third Purge movie is kind of like that. I like the whole Purge series, except I didn't like the third one.
Is that the original one? Was that the original one where they go back to the beginning? Was that that one?
No, I love that one. The one I didn't like was the election year one.
Oh yeah.
Which I thought like this will be like, this is perfect. This will be like this will be a great. This should be like the perfect Purge movie, really. But it just hit you in the face with a sledgehammer all the time with its points. And even if I agree with the points it's making, that kind of starts to annoy me after a while. But so I kind of was a little afraid that The Hunt would wind up being like that, but it wasn't. It was really fun. It's funny. It's kind of smart, pretty smart, I think. Not as smart as smarter than it got credit for, I think. And it's just a good action movie too. So yeah, and I didn't actually see that in the theater. I missed it. So I watched it on DVD or Blu-ray months later. So I did not get a chance to see that in the theater like you did. So
yeah. This was literally the last film that I saw in the theaters before everything went dark. I mean, we did see in the middle of the year, we did go see the Tenet in theaters, but this was literally the last film that I saw for like months in theaters. So when I saw this film, it's funny because it was actually it was like I had already been like pretty much the pandemic was here. You know what I mean? It was March. So I remember going to the theaters. They had already started doing the separating in theaters and stuff like that. And they like gave us like hand sanitizer to like wipe down like the seats and stuff like that. And there was only like a few people in the theaters at that point. And literally like a couple days after I saw this film, everything pretty much went dead. You know what I mean? Like I saw it March 16th, I think is the date that like everything really came to a screeching halt. I remember that date only because it's when we started our show for doing the SacTown movie buffs. That's also, we were already basically working from home at that point. That was like the last day that I think I had to actually go to work was the 16th or whatever. So after that, I was pretty much working from home. So I do remember that about this film also. But I love the film, but it was just like really one of those weird times watching this film. And I still loved it, you know what I mean? Even though it was kind of a really, really strange time to watch it because, it's like the world's like crumbling around me. And at this point, no one really knew enough about the virus or how deadly it was, or you know what I mean? Like I was just like, man, this is getting crazy out here, man. I don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna be boarding up the walls, and so it was a nice little escapism from all the chaos that was about to happen around me. So
yeah, it's kind of weird because it came out at that time where I was actually finding myself in the somewhere where I never thought I would be, where I'm actually weighing do I want to see this movie enough to risk my life?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe I was having to have those thoughts. And I think like you said, there was the window of it coming out and then everything shutting down wasn't very long anyway. So I didn't have much of a choice anyway, but I think that was one I remember thinking like, yeah, I think I can wait, rather than risk whatever this thing is that seems to be like enveloping everything,
Absolutely.
So, but I'm definitely glad I watched it for sure, even if it was months later.
For sure. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Moving on. Number 4.
Yep.
Bring yours in. Your number 4 film of 2020 is His House.
Yes. I think there were a number of very good horror movies in 2020, but nothing affected me quite like this movie. I thought it was excellent. So this movie is about a pair of Sudanese refugees who flee their homeland and wind up in the UK, where they're given refuge, but under conditions. They have to find a job, they have to earn a living, but in the meantime, they're given a house to stay in. And it turns out to be a haunted house, So it is a haunted house movie, but it's a haunted house movie that's not really like anything else I've ever seen. Because it's not just a standard haunted house movie. It is about the both literally and figuratively. It's about the ghosts, if you will, that they brought with them on their trip. So it's about the specter of living under a dictatorship and having to endure such heinous acts of violence, and maybe having to commit some heinous acts too along the way just to survive. So it is a haunted house movie, but it's also, to me, it was so much more. And it does everything that a good horror movie does. It gives you these two characters who are deeply sympathetic, but also very human, very dimensional. And it puts them in a difficult situation, a scary situation. It's got a lot of really amazing imagery in it, which I'm big on. I'm big on a movie showing me some sights that I've never seen before. And there are some compositions in this movie that I've never quite seen before in a horror movie. And it's also just really suspenseful. Like I was definitely on the edge of my seat toward the end. And again, it really brings home that the points I was talking about earlier about how in life in general, especially if you live under under a regime like that, that you take your ghosts with you no matter where you go. And I think it tells that story in a really interesting way. It's over and done in 90 minutes, but it really knocked me flat emotionally anyway. So for a 90-minute movie, it really packed the punch, I think. And I think, even if you don't think you like horror movies, I think this is one worth checking out for sure. But if you do like horror movies, all the better. So yeah, His House, definitely one of my favorite movies of the year.
Cool. Yeah, I liked His House. I didn't love it as much as you did, obviously. And it is one of those films where, like I said, it is like it's a horror movie that is kind of a metaphor. Which is good. And like I said, it is short. It gets you in and gets you out of there. I liked it. I didn't love it quite as much as you did. I didn't go crazy for it, but it was one that I definitely enjoyed. Didn't quite make my runner up either, but definitely one that if like you said, if you're into horror, definitely recommend you check this one out for sure. It does have some very suspenseful moments. It's got an interesting story. I never knew a lot about the I mean, obviously they're in the UK, but I never knew a lot about like the immigration policy for, or for refugees, or I should say not immigrants, but refugees more, because they're actually fleeing their country from the Sudan. There hasn't been a whole lot of films that were about the Sudan in this capacity. Are people fleeing there, and what happens to those people that are leaving these war torn type countries, and where they end up at. And so I thought that story was very interesting as well. I enjoyed that story probably a little more than the horror for some reason, in my opinion. But yeah, overall, not a bad film. Definitely enjoyed that one for sure. So cool. All right, moving on to my number 4. Bring that in. One that we've seen recently. It's actually going to be One Night in Miami. So we already kind of touched on this one. We did a review on this one just a few weeks ago. One of the last films that I've seen of 2020, actually. Really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's a film that basically is about Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke. That basically, after Muhammad Ali won the world title, they all happen to be in Miami. They were all at the fight. They all basically go back to Malcolm X's hotel. They thought for a party, but he really wanted them there to just kind of talk and talk about maybe Malcolm X's move towards being a Muslim and that kind of stuff. But it just engages in some of the best, most riveting dialogue, especially from a first-time director and Regina King. I thought for a first-time directorial debut, she did a really, really excellent job. And what I really like about this film is it's got 4 people in there that really weren't stars. Like they're recognizable faces. Some of them I've seen them and stuff, but I didn't know them by name. I didn't know any of the stars of this film by name. I couldn't tell you who they were by name, but I mean I can now probably, but you know what I mean. But before this film, I didn't know who any of these people were, and so I thought it was really interesting that you got 4 people that weren't big time stars, big name people, and to do these really good dialogue scenes and really get into some heavy stuff. And it's interesting because, like I said, they're all 4 people that were in the 60s, in the early 60s during this, right around the civil rights movement and right in the middle of it. And they were all kind of going in different directions, and they all had different influences over that movement, in terms of being a musician. A change is going to come. This was before he wrote that famous song. And Muhammad Ali, this is before he actually became Muhammad Ali. He was actually still Cassius Clay. And so it's a lot of things like right before what was ever going to happen or what they were going to do socially. Jim Brown, he was kind of nearing the end of his football career at this point and kind of getting more into acting and becoming more of an activist as well. The only one was Malcolm X was actually probably towards the end of his political aspirations. He was already kind of like separating from the Nation of Islam and wanted to kind of go his own path and that kind of stuff in terms of being a political speaker and that kind of stuff. He was having a falling out with some of the other leadership within the Nation of Islam. And so it was a very interesting because all of that gets touched on in this film. And so it's just a really, really good dialogue. It's mostly centered in a hotel. Another one that, usually, is a play, and but it doesn't feel like completely overplay-like, in my opinion. It's just got some really good riveting dialogue. And, it's like I said, loosely based on a true story. I don't know the extent of these conversations because most of these guys have passed on it outside of Jim Brown, obviously. But yeah, just really, really good film. I really enjoyed it. Very powerful film. One that definitely, I urge anyone to check out.
Yeah, I loved it as well. Not my top 10, but definitely in, like I've mentioned before, a long list of very solid runner-ups this year or last year. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you said, like all 4 actors, I didn't know them. Like I think I recognized them, from small roles and other things maybe, but mm-hmm. I didn't know any of them really. And all 4 of them really knock it out of the park. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, Regina King, definitely a solid job. She doesn't get in the way too much. There's not a whole lot of individual style to it, but it doesn't really need a lot of individual style. It's just,
no, I don't think it's that kind of film. Yeah, for sure.
Right, yeah. So yeah, it's a very strong movie. Liked it a lot. Not my top 10, but definitely I would still say it's one of the best movies of last year. Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Cool. All right, well, moving right along. We're on number 3.
Yep.
Bring this in. Number 3 for you is The Vast of Night.
The Vast of Night. Yeah, this is one of the first. We reviewed this fairly early on, I think, in the pandemic. I didn't check for sure, but it seems like one of the first movies.
It was pretty early on for sure.
Pretty early on, yeah. So this movie, actually, now that I think about it, we're reviewing a lot of movies that are almost stage play like. This one actually is almost like a radio play in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is.
But it's set. Yeah, it's set in the late 50s, early 60s. I can't remember exactly. But it's set over the course of one night. Really, it's almost in real time. Not quite, but almost in real time. These two teenagers in this, middle America average town one night in the late 50s or early 60s. And one of them is a switchboard operator, like back when, you actually had to call a switchboard operator and they would plug, in the wires to connect your call. And she gets a call of somebody reporting something strange in the sky. And then she hears something strange over the radio waves. So she talks to her friend who is a radio DJ, across town. And that starts off this kind of almost real-time adventure, kind of them trying to find out what that is in the sky, because it seems like it's a UFO, and is it a threat? What's going on? So it's a really interesting take on a science fiction film. It's got some touches that are very early Spielberg, a little early Joe Dante to it. It's just a really interesting movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. It is almost like a radio play at times, but it's just a really good. I'm noticing there's a lot of first-time directors here, and this is another first-time director here that made a really interesting movie out of a very bare-bones concept. And there's a lot of really interesting camera work. There's a couple of shots that are unbroken shots that travel all the way across this small town. And wherever they shot this, it's just perfect. But yeah, it's one of my favorite movies of the year. It's one of the best science fiction films I've seen in a long time. It's creepy, it's suspenseful, the acting is really, really good, and just one that I thoroughly enjoyed. So yeah, that's definitely my number 3. It was my number 1 for a little while, but it's my number 3 now. So there you go.
Cool. Yeah, I remember being your number 1 for quite some time, I thought. So yeah, I didn't care for this one quite as much as you did. It just wasn't my jam. I just thought the pacing wasn't quite as fast as I would like it to be. And I just was never really fully immersed in the film. I just wasn't. It never grabbed me like it did for you. So I'm not, and I'll admit I'm not the hugest sci-fi person, I guess, if you will. So that's not usually the genre that I necessarily gravitate towards. But for me, it didn't really do enough for me to say that I enjoyed it or would revisit or anything like that. But people do like it. Not everybody, but I do know some people that definitely do like it. Yeah, just didn't do a whole lot for me personally. So, but to each their own.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, enough on that one. Moving on to my number 3, is going to be The Social Dilemma. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. We had a really, really good pairing with this one. We did this and Feels Good Man. It was a really, really interesting pairing for two documentaries, basically about social media and the way that social media can kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I guess the negative aspects of what social media can do. Whereas and we did the
dark side.
What's that?
The dark side of social media.
Yeah, the dark side of social media, basically. And we did compare the two films in terms of whereas the Feels Good Man film was more narrow about one person and a specific character, Pepe, that basically turned into like this right-wing hate thing, basically.
Yeah.
This one was more broad, and I kind of gravitated more towards this one because of the broadness of it. It basically just deals with social media in general, in terms of like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and everything like that. And it basically, it doesn't necessarily tell me anything that I didn't necessarily kind of have an idea of already, but it kind of expounded upon like how it works. And so what I liked about it, it's a documentary because they get all these big time like app developers that made the like button for Facebook and that sort of stuff. They get all these big time developers that develop these things in there, and they're talking about how how what they intended got turned into something different. A like button to them, when they first made this like button was because it was to bring joy to somebody, like, oh, that's a very nice picture, I like that. But they
Yeah.
were saying, they didn't think about the negative aspects of what happens when you don't get liked. You know what I mean? Like, you post a picture and nobody likes it, or only one person or two people likes it. What that does to our psyche, what that does to our emotional state, our emotional well-being. And it's true. It's just like anything else. Like, we have a podcast and the YouTube channel, and we're on social media all over the place. And we post a video, and if it gets lots of views or lots of comments or whatever, it's a good feeling. You're like, oh, this is awesome. But we post videos sometimes that don't get as more views or don't get as many likes, or nobody really watches it, and it's just like, oh, what? How come no one liked that video? How come nobody's liking this? You know what I mean? So, how come no one downloaded this podcast? So it kind of it does something to the psyche, and that's kind of what this was about. It also talks about what social media is doing to our kids. How they don't go outside anymore, how they're all stuck to their phone, and how social media is constantly trying to grab your attention with different updates and alerts and things of that nature, like on your cell phone. Like, I pull up my phone right now, and I've started to remove notifications off my phone for some aspects. You know what I mean? Like, I don't do Facebook notifications because I would get those all day, all night. You know what I mean? There's always something going on Facebook, and they would send you random stuff, like people that I don't even necessarily like follow. I'm friends with them, but they'll show me a post that someone posted, and I'm like, I haven't talked to this person in 2 years. Why are you just showing me this? But it's just whatever Facebook can do to get you back on there, just go check out whatever photo they posted or whatever thing blurb they posted or whatever case may be. And they all do this because they're all kind of vying and fighting for your attention. And I just like that. That was really interesting. And then, so that was the outer work framing of it. But inside of it, there's also kind of like a movie that they also make inside of it as well, where it's basically taking you through a family that's kind of addicted to their cell phones, and they show you kind of like the algorithm and how it's like basically looking for different ways to keep you engaged. Like, there's one of the boys in the film, he was like saying that he wasn't going to use his cell phone for a little bit, and the algorithm was like, well, we got to get him back online. What can we do? Oh, I know. Let's post a picture. Let's send him an alert of his ex-girlfriend dating a new guy. Like stuff like that. So I just enjoyed it. I thought it was a great film. I think it's a very powerful film. I think it's definitely a film that I would urge anyone to check out, because it really does kind of make you open up your eyes a little bit more to kind of what social media is doing to our society and just how divided. It also talks about, political as well. They believe that social media is a direct influence of how divided we are becoming as a country, or world, I guess, if you will. Because they send you news feeds of whatever you subscribe to. So if you're a liberal or lean more towards the left, you're getting nothing but news feeds, from liberal things telling you these are your facts, and vice versa. If you're conservative, you're getting nothing but news feeds from conservative outlets telling you these are the facts, when they're completely different. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, wherever side you lead on, you think that your facts are 100% right, but there's always one side or the other, and what's in the middle kind of thing. So yeah, so it is very, very interesting in that capacity as well. And like I said, just a really, really powerful film. Definitely one that I urge anyone to check out. And that's my number 3 for 2020.
Yeah, I liked that movie a lot. I did like that movie a lot, and it encourages discussion, which I think is a good thing, and it encourages thoughts. Because we had like a really long discussion about that, because not that I didn't have doubts already beforehand, but this year or last year has really, like, I've really changed the way I thought about social media, and I really do think that it really has kind of destabilize the fabric of our lives, everybody's lives, in a way that I'm really uncomfortable with, increasingly uncomfortable with. So for all the good it does, I think ultimately, honestly, I've been kind of on the fence for a while, but I think honestly, I think it's done more harm than good, to be honest. And I've done a lot to really kind of step away from it this year, or the past couple months, especially. And I keep posting, because I like to write. I post movie reviews. I like to write them, so I post them. But what I've done lately is I only check notifications like once a week or so, and I've found that it frees up my time so much. I have time to read. I have time to talk to people on the phone, actually. And it's like, I don't think we're meant to be friends with 500 people at once. I just don't, and I've really enjoyed kind of extricating myself from that constant feedback loop that it is. It's like, notification. It's like a dopamine hit every time you see that red balloon, and I'm glad to be out of that. I don't have that feeling anymore. Like, I've got to check for notifications. How many people have liked that? How many people have commented on that? You know what I mean? It's like almost like withdrawal for a little while, but I got free of that, and I feel better for it, and I turned off all the notifications. So, but you're right, they do try, like I'll get like an email, they'll try me on the email saying like, your partner posted an update. Want to see what it is? Click here. And I'm like, nope, I'll see it later. So, I mean, we could talk for hours about that, but
we could, just go on and on. But yeah, and we had a really good discussion on that. And if you're listening and you haven't checked that, definitely check out the Social Dilemma and Feels Good Man discussion. It was a really, really good, like 40-minute discussion about, social media in general. So yeah, definitely. So
yeah.
Cool. All right.
On.
Moving on, because we could go on for hours just on that topic alone. But definitely also check out that film too. It's a really, really good, powerful film as well. So your number 2, actually. Oh yeah, we're really moving along now. Your number 2 is actually going to be In Search of Darkness Part 2. So I have actually haven't seen this one, but yeah. So fitting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, we've talked a lot about In Search of Darkness, and we also even did an interview recently with the director of both In Search of Darkness documentaries, David Weiner. So this documentary, admittedly, it's pretty much, made for someone like me. I'll admit that. It's both of them are 4-hour plus documentaries solely about 1980s horror films. So horror is my favorite genre. I came of age in the 80s, so this movie is like catnip for me, admittedly. But, it was made for me to love it. But I still think it's above and beyond most documentaries of the kind. Because I know you can watch, a documentary just about any interest now. I mean, there's almost every day that some documentary for me pops up on Amazon Prime about something that I'd be interested in. So I've seen a million documentaries about horror movies, but these 2 documentaries I think are really special, not just in the amount of material they cover, but the presentation. I love the presentation, the way it goes year by year. The group of interviewees they have is really terrific. Both of them have really great scores. The poster artwork is really above and beyond any other movie documentary about movies that I've seen. So, I guess, you could quibble maybe that I'm putting a documentary about movies so high on my top 10 list. But for me, like I said at the beginning of this video, I was concentrating a lot on just my favorite movie experiences this year. And both of those movies that I've seen this year, because I just watched part 1 this year also, when I look back at this year, these 2 In Search of Darkness documentaries will be one of my favorite movie memories, guaranteed. So that's why I was like, really, why shouldn't it be at the top of my list? I truly love them. I've watched them both twice. They're great. I love them. Number 2, In Search of Darkness Part 2.
Cool. I can't comment too much on part 2 because I haven't seen it, of course. But I did see part 1, and I definitely did like that. And like I said, we had a really, really good conversation discussion with the director of the film, which you can check that out on our YouTube channel as well. Yeah, I mean, they're definitely good. I think that you have to be somewhat of a fan of horror in order to even want to sit through them. So I don't know that they're made for everybody. Not that any movie's really made for everybody, you know what I mean? But because they are 4.5 hour long, you definitely have to kind of brace yourself. But if you're a true horror fan and you enjoy horror, I think everybody will get something out of it. But like I said, I do know that. This one, from what you told me, it shows a little bit more of the obscure horror films, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, if there's films that you haven't seen before, or maybe you're interested in other horror movies from the 80s that maybe weren't as popular, then you would definitely want to gravitate towards this documentary for that one. Versus I felt like the first one, from my understanding, it did include most of the bigger ones. There was a few rare ones as well, but it included most of the bigger ones on there. The big horror films of the 80s, the Fright Nights and Lost Boys and the Howlings and all that stuff. So yeah, and this one seems like it was a little bit more of the ones that got missed, or the ones that people were like, fans were like, hey, we definitely, you excluded this film. This is one of my favorite horror films of all time, and it appeared in this one. And they are also working on a third part as well. So we'll have even more films on that. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I guess it's tailor-made for you. I don't know that it's tailor-made for everybody to be in their top 10. I don't know that if I saw it, it would be my top 10 necessarily. It is, because it is a long documentary. It is 4.5 hours long. So you definitely would have to be in the mood for that, or watch it in a couple different parts. But from my understanding, or from my feeling, the first one plays like a mini series in a way. So you could watch it broken up in parts by parts. And that's kind of the way I felt about it over like a film. And I know it is a documentary film that's 4.5 hours long, but I feel like it's more like a mini series in my opinion. So I think just on that, I don't know if I would, I haven't seen this one, of course, but I don't know that if it would make my top 10 just as a film, because it feels more like a mini series to me. I don't know. So, but I definitely enjoyed the first one, and I'm sure I will get around to checking out the second one at some point as well. So, cool.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, moving on to my number 2. Which we've already covered, so it won't take too long. It's actually going to be Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So yeah, like I said, I already kind of covered in my feelings about it. I thought the acting was great. I thought Chadwick Boseman was phenomenal in there in his last role. Viola Davis is really, really good. I don't know how the Oscars are going to do this year, because everything's pretty much was streamed. But based on the films that I've seen this year, I'd be highly surprised if these two, Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman, don't get mentioned or nominated for something. If not Oscars, Golden Globes, or some award show or something like that. I think Chadwick Boseman has a better shot. Maybe they have an equal shot, but I think he has a better shot just based on the fact that he passed away and and that kind of stuff. But I'd be really surprised if they didn't get nominated, both of them, because both of them did a phenomenal job. And everybody in the film is great, but I thought they really, really stood out, and they had some really, really good dialogue lines that they were given, and they did them flawlessly. So great film, like I said, definitely my number 2 of the year. So.
Right. Yeah, already covered. But yeah, great movie.
So we can move right along to your number 1. So drum roll, please. Your number 1 film of 2020 is going to be American Utopia.
American Utopia, which I don't think you've seen, probably, huh? Not
seen.
No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a great movie. It is the other Spike Lee movie that came out this year. It is I'm not sure it's your kind of thing, really, because it's a live recording of a Broadway show. It's not like your typical Broadway show, not by any means, though. It is American Utopia by David Byrne, who is the former lead singer of the Talking Heads. It's his stage show that's based on his album of the same name, which I had never even heard, actually. I'm a big David Byrne fan because I'm a big Talking Heads fan. But I'm not like an expert on his solo career, and I hadn't heard this album before. But it is an amazing show, and I think it's kind of the movie that everybody needs in a lot of ways this year. It's just a bunch of songs, really. I mean, like, there's not a whole lot of a story. There's kind of maybe a slight narrative, but it's mostly just about the state of America in all ways. So, it's really hard to describe in a way that makes it come across just how powerful this movie is. But if you enjoy live performance, if you enjoy good music, this is not the first time Spike Lee has done a movie that is a filming of a sort of a musical Broadway performance, because Passing Strange was even better. But, it's hard to describe because it really is just, for the most part, it's a multimedia presentation in the background, of course, but it's mostly just performers standing on the stage playing music and singing songs but the whole tapestry of America is the background. So it's hard to describe in a way that makes it sound amazing unless you're already a David Byrne fan. But it's a tremendous movie that touches on a lot of things in a way that is very cinematic, but also very live music feeling. And especially if you miss live music, like I miss live music, it's really an amazing experience in every way. So I urge everyone to watch American Utopia, even if you don't know who any of these people are. But just check it out and let yourself be transported. So that's easily my number one favorite movie experience of the year. Not a traditional movie by any means, but it's definitely my favorite thing that I watched last year, easily. So American Utopia.
Cool. Like I said, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment too much on it. I'm not big on musicals per se, so I don't know that, it's one that I'm gonna rush out and watch, but definitely one that I'll probably check out at some point. So I don't know that, based on what you're telling me and based on what you described on it, or described about it, it would be something that, I would love necessarily. So it might be, but who knows? You never know. Maybe we'll watch it and we'll have to reshoot this whole show all over again because I have to change my top 10.
That's right.
Probably not, but you never know. You just never know.
Never know.
Cool. Well, good list. I will start with my number one, or finish off with my number one film of the year, and it's one that I don't think you've actually seen yet, so I don't know. So we'll have to see. My number one film of 2020 actually is The Gentleman. So I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I haven't yet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So two number ones that we've never seen. Yeah, I love this movie. It is just funny. It's got great acting. It's got an all-star cast: Matthew McConaughey, Charlie Hunnam, Colin Farrell. I mean, it's got so many people in there. It's just like really, really good film. It's a British film, a Guy Ritchie film, obviously. It's a British film, but it's basically about Matthew McConaughey is basically a kind of like a weed farmer. Basically, he grows marijuana, and he has a business, and there's like rival gangs that are basically trying to take over his business, and and he's actually looking to get out of the business as well, but there's also people on the underneath that are trying to take over his business. So it's got a lot of action, it's got a lot of humor. It's got a lot of good excitement, fight scenes, stuff like that. And I just loved it. I thought it was a great film. I saw it, like I said, at the very beginning of the year, and it's one of the ones that still kind of stuck with me throughout the year. And then, rewatched it again, and it's like, man, this is a really, really good film. I got even more value out of it the second time around. So yeah, definitely my number one film of the year is The Gentleman. So, cool.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I had no idea, man. I mean, I remember that you liked it. I guess I didn't understand like how much you liked it, apparently. So wow. Yeah. Okay. I guess I have to put it to the front of my list now.
No, I loved it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Nice.
Great film. Definitely my speed. Yeah. I love those action, and I don't always love Guy Ritchie, but obviously we've had conversations in the past. I like Snatch a lot, but I really love Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels quite a bit. That was like my number one film like 20 something years ago or something, but I don't know if it'd still be my number one film of that year today, but definitely really love that one quite a bit too. But this one I think is even better, and I can understand the actors a little more because they did mostly use a lot of American actors for it, so it made it a little bit easier too. But no, definitely a great one. Definitely, I think it was Guy Ritchie at the top of his game in my opinion. So that's my number one.
Right. Cool.
I'm going to run through just a couple quick honorable mentions. I don't know if you had any. Did you bring a few or that you wanted to talk about? Or
I could just name some.
Yeah, I'll name a few, just a few ones that I saw, and they were Have a Good Trip, Becky, The Old Guard, which I know you didn't like, Palm Springs, and Fat Man. Those are the ones that right off the top of my head that I wanted to include that definitely urge anyone to check out. So.
Yeah. I loved Fat Man. Tenet really went up the list for me the second time I saw it. I loved Color Out of Space a lot. I know you love that one too.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. Let me see. The Prom I liked, which is definitely not your cup of tea. Sound of Metal I liked a lot. Belushi, the documentary Belushi, I liked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could name like 30 movies that I really liked a lot. #Alive. A lot. One Night in Miami. Alone. I could name dozens, but I won't because it's already a long video.
Yeah, for sure. We can go another half hour on honorable mentions for sure. But yeah. But yeah, good list. Like I said, definitely. This, and if you're first time listening, this just gives you an idea of our differences in style. So we just we gravitate to different types of films, but a lot of the ones that we're in his top 10, maybe my honorable mention or vice versa. And then obviously there's a few that we haven't seen and, but of each other's, but for the most part, I think that we generally like a lot of the same kind of movies, but we also have our differences as well. So cool. Well, that was a very long show, so hopefully you guys all made it through the whole show. But obviously let us know down in the comments, your top 10 films for 2020, any that we left out you thought should have been included. Everybody's got a different opinion or different taste, but we definitely urge you guys to comment. Obviously, if you like the channel, we ask you like, subscribe, make sure you hit the bell notification so you don't miss our updates, and we'll be back again with some more shows for you guys again real soon. We thank you for watching and hope you have a great day. Bye.